All right, Nick Angstadt from Locked On Mavs, Darian Vaziri, Locked On Clippers, and no one knows our teams better than we do. We've watched every single game. Some of us have watched our team every single game for like almost 20 years with you, Darian. An incredible amount of time you've watched the Clippers. You know this team inside and out. So my question is, how did the Mavericks beat the Clippers?
One, push the pace. This Clipper team is slow and unathletic. And old. So you got to push the pace. Two, test Ty Lue. And what I mean by that is see which guys he's willing to switch onto Luka and Kyrie. Luka and Kyrie are going to have the ball in their hands a lot. Clippers have been switching James Harden and Norman Powell onto these elite players and other teams all season long. If I'm Kyrie Irving or Luka Doncic, here, James Harden, come guard me in the playoff setting. Come do it. That's what I would do. Because James, he actually will take pride here and there one-on-one. He'll get some big steals, but can he do it over the course of a series when you repeatedly attack him? And in the regular season, it feels like teams don't attack Harden enough because they more so want to attack the big man. They want their big men to be rollers, get them going. So another way to beat the Clippers is get Zubats off the floor. And the Mavericks in the past have done a very good job doing that. This time around, the Clippers don't have the same small ball options and familiarity that they did in the past. So if Zubats comes off the floor, you're relying on Mason Plumlee and Daniel Tice to protect the rim. 1-6-8, one doesn't protect the rim to save his life. So you're in a tough situation there. So that's what I would say in terms of attacking the Clippers defensively. See what Ty Lue's willing to do. Push the pace because they're a poor transition defense team. And then if you can play Zubats off the floor, these small ball lineups are not what they used to be. So that would be something. And then in terms of Clippers offense, run them off the 3-point line. Very few guys that are comfortable attacking closeouts. Mainly Norman Powell is the most comfortable, and Terrence Mann's not bad. But Kawhi, Paul George, James Harden, they're not fantastic attacking closeouts, in my opinion. Paul George, probably the best of the three, but Kawhi Leonard, even when he pump fakes and steps in, he doesn't usually get so far in front of the defender that was just closing out. They usually are in his rear view. It's just nothing that Kawhi does offensively is that quick anymore. You know, he has great hands on defense, but it's more methodical. He still gets to his spots, though, and is still brilliant. So it doesn't really matter, but it's a relevant thing.
The speed thing that you brought up at first is interesting to me. It's been such an emphasis for the Mavericks. They've been trying to play faster. They're 9th in the league in pace after being 30th the last, I don't know, forever. Even go back to them playing with old Dirk. Like, you had to play slow just to wait for the guy to catch up to the play. But I think the speed thing is really interesting because you'd think everything in the playoffs slows down, and it probably does. But if the Mavericks can push any of that pace and play a little faster, then the Clippers, you mentioned the Clippers could be vulnerable in that way. And I think that's something the Mavericks have been trying to. It's almost like poetic how they've been trying to push that since the beginning of the season. And this is the thing that could help them beat the team that's beat them 2 series before, and this is now the 3rd try that they get at it. The other part about just attacking players over and over again, attacking the James Harden and Norman Powell, like that's Luka's bread and butter. Like that's what Luka does. Luka will just spam the same thing over and over again. He'll call up any defender over and over again. I'm interested to see if Ty Lue does change. If they do decide to switch it up, and if they do decide to, all right, we're not going to let James Harden just get torched by Luka over and over again. How do they change that? Do they just force Kawhi or Paul George or I don't know who else to just, all right, you've just got to stick with him. You've got to fight through screens.
That's one way, although I don't think that will be a thing, especially in regards to Kawhi's not switching on screens and staying attached till either late game or late series.
Yeah, right.
But you would have to just, as the guard, James Harden, show and recover, which is still, somewhat problematic because James is then chasing somebody in the short roll situation. I haven't watched the Mavs enough to know how the Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving. I mean, I don't think James Harden would be guarding Kyrie Irving, so it wouldn't be that. James Harden in the starting lineup is most likely going to be guarding Derrick Jones Jr. to start games. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. But regardless, you're putting James Harden, the Clippers in rotation no matter what if we're not switching, which is why teams don't switch. They don't want their defense to be in rotation, but I'd rather have the defense in rotation and getting other defenders involved in the play than having James Harden guard Luka on an island. So that would be my preference. As far as, I think Daniel Tice is actually an interesting name in this series because he's actually shown some ability to switch on to perimeter players to a degree, whereas Mason and Zoo don't. So I'm not saying you can lock up Luka Doncic, but who knows? He might be able to get a stop or two by putting a hand up and forcing Luka to take that step back and put a hand up, and you hope for the best. Whereas Zoo, it feels like Luka just creates so much separation when he's shooting that 3 ball and when he's isoing against him at the top that it just feels like, yeah, okay, we just can't let this happen. So
it's almost as if because they know each other that Luka does it on purpose to Zubac. It's like he wants to go after him even more. I think that's another way the Mavericks can beat the Clippers if we're gonna continue on this, is that I think if they do play Zubac off the floor, the Mavericks small ball units have been better this season than the Clippers small ball has. And maybe it shifts in the playoffs, and maybe there's something that we're missing with it. But I think if it does go down to small versus small, I think the Mavericks finally have the advantage in that way, where they didn't necessarily in the first 2 series we saw these teams a couple years ago.
Yeah. I also want to finish off by saying the 3 other stars outside of Kawhi, like the big names, Westbrook, Harden, and Paul, they could be their own worst enemies. And here's how I think you can cause them to be. With Westbrook, everybody knows you go underneath screens when he gets on ball screens and try to sag off of him off the ball. See how that goes. If you get Westbrook to speed up, to go too fast, and one thing, if you're a defense and you see Westbrook driving, do not help off of shooters or anything like that, or anyone. Make him finish the contested layup, because there's a whole thing, and it's been a thing for the last couple of years, of Russell Westbrook missing chippies at the rim. And almost every time he misses, it results in a basket for the other team on the other end, because he won't get back. He'll like either complain for a foul, or he'll just be so mad that he missed. So don't help. Westbrook, when he's driving, he wants you to help so he can make the kick out pass. You got to make him finish over the top of your defense. And then 2 with James Harden, same principle. You stay home on the shooters and hope that your point of attack defense and your drop big, because you've been playing Gafford and drop coverage a good amount, right?
Yeah, right.
Right. So you got to hope that you can guard 2-on-2 and not get everybody else involved, because James Harden, as I said, if you force him into that mid-range in-between area, he can be a little uncomfortable, but it really has to come from a solid drop defender and a good point of attack guy, the combination of both. And that good point of attack guy, when it's not Exum Derek Jones, I don't know who can contain James Harden on that. Dallas might not have that guy. And then the last one is Paul George. He has a tendency to settle big time, as we talked about in the episodes. The Clippers still have the same weaknesses they used to. They're a jump shot heavy team. When the shots don't fall, sometimes they're not getting as many easy baskets. Of course, James Harden has helped with that, but if you force Paul George and get physical with him and push him out of the paint where he's catching like 18 to 20 feet away or further, you'll force him into a lot of contested jumpers. And if you're preventing Paul George from getting to the paint, then there's a very high chance he has bad shooting games. So that's basically the whole thing I can say on the Clippers. That's, for the most part, all our weaknesses.